Hi, I'm Christine Wolf with Musician's Toolkit. Today we'll be talking about music essentials. Let's get started. When a composer wants an alternate ending for a repeated section of music, they will use a first ending and second ending. To do a first ending, you simply play from the beginning of the marked section to the first repeat sign, and then go back to the beginning. When playing through the second time, you will skip the first ending and go straight to the second ending, providing the alternate ending for that section of music. When notes are put onto a staff, they need to be organized. The way we do this is by adding bar lines. Bar lines are a vertical line that intersect the staff. When you have more than one bar line, it creates a measure. Measures are the best way to organize the notes on the staff. At the end, you will have a double bar line, and that indicates the end of a section or the end of a song. The chromatic scale is a scale pattern that uses exclusively half steps. When you are playing a chromatic scale, it is important to utilize sharps as you're ascending the scale and flats when you are descending in the scale. Second half note. The division of the half note occurs with a quarter note, which is worth one count. There are 4 quarter notes in one whole note and 2 quarter notes in each half note. 1, 2, 3, and 4. The next subdivision would be eighth notes, and there are 2 eighth notes in each quarter note. They are counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So there are 4 eighth notes in a half note and 8 eighth notes in a whole note. The next subdivision would be 16th notes. They have 2 16th notes in each eighth note, 4 16th notes in each quarter note, and 16 16th notes in each whole note. 16th notes are counted 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. The example below will show you how to count each of these notes. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 E and a, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. A composer may also use 2 other forms of alternate endings for a song. Often you will see a DC al fine. That means da capo al fine. Da capo means to go back to the beginning of the song and play until you see the word fine, which means the end. A DS al fine means that you go dal segno, back to the sign. That has a small S marking. When you go to the sign, you then play to the fine. Let's talk about dotted notes. It is important to remember that the same rule applies for all dotted notes. The dot is equal to half the value of the note that it's attached to. For example, a dotted half note is worth 3 counts. The half note is worth 2, and the dot, which is half of 2, is worth 1. 2 plus 1 is 3, so a dotted half note is worth 3 counts. A dotted quarter note is worth 1.5 counts, because a quarter note is worth 1, and half of a quarter note is a half, so 1.5 counts. A dotted eighth note is worth 3/4 of a count, because the eighth note is worth a half, and the dot, being half of that, is worth a quarter, so 3/4 of a count. These are all dotted notes. Dynamic markings starting at the softest level would be pianissimo, which means very soft. Then piano, which means soft. Mezzo piano means medium soft, followed by mezzo forte, medium loud, forte, which is loud, and fortissimo, which is very loud. Often, a composer will use a sign that looks like this. It is a crescendo. It means to start soft and gradually increase the sound to a louder dynamic level. In contrast to that, you would also have a decrescendo, which is to start loudly and get soft over a gradual period of time. These are all dynamics. Every note has its equivalent in sound and in silence. The eighth note gets a half of a count. You can usually recognize the eighth note because of the flag that is attached to the stem. Because there are 2 eighth notes in one quarter note, sometimes the eighth notes are beamed together in groups of 2 or in groups of 4. The eighth rest gets 1/2 count of silence. It looks like a 7 with a little ball on the end. When a note has 2 names for the same pitch, we call that enharmonics. For example, C sharp and D flat are both the same pitch but have two different names. All notes have their equivalent in sound and in silence. The half note looks just like a whole note, except it has a stem that either goes down on the left or up on the right, depending on where it is on the staff. It gets 2 counts. The half rest sits above the third line. It kind of looks like a hat, so that helps you to remember that the half rest gets 2 counts of silence. Half steps and whole steps are more easily understood at the piano keyboard. A half step is the distance between one note and the note nearest to it. For instance, C to C sharp. A half step can go between a white note and its nearest black note, but sometimes it can be a white note to another white note. For instance, E to F. In music, you have flats and sharps. Flats lower the note by a half step. To find out where the flat is, you will first find its natural note. For instance, B natural, and then lowered by a half step would be B flat. Contrary to that, you have sharps, which raise a note a half a step. A sharp, for instance, F natural, to F sharp, up a half a step. These are half steps. To create a whole step, you simply add 2 half steps together. From F to F sharp is 1 half step, and from F sharp to G is the second half step, creating a whole step between F and G. These are half steps and whole steps. It's important to remember that when you have music with flats or sharps, you can also have naturals. Naturals are important to understand because they will cancel out a flat or a sharp in the same measure. Intervals are the distance between notes in music. There are 8 main classifications of intervals. When you have 2 notes that are the same pitch, we call that a unison. The next interval would be a second, followed by a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, and lastly, an octave. These are intervals in music. When sharps and flats are placed at the beginning of each line, we call that a key signature. The key signature affects all of the notes on the staff. The order of flats and sharps in a key signature are very specific and always follow a specific order. The order of sharps are F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp, E sharp, and B sharp. The order of flats are B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, C flat, and F flat. The music staff is extended with ledger lines, similar to the rungs on a ladder. When you're going up into the ledger lines, you will follow the musical alphabet forward. When you're going down the ledger lines, you will follow the musical alphabet in reverse. When the note or notes of a song begin before the first full measure, it is called a pickup note. To decide how to count the pickup note, you simply add the note values together before the song starts and subtract it from the top number of the time signature. That is how you count a pickup note. Every note has its equivalent in sound and in silence. The quarter note gets 1 count. It looks like a half note, but the head of the note is filled in. It also has a stem that can go down on the left or up on the right, depending on where it is on the staff. The quarter rest gets 1 count of silence. It looks like a Z with a little tail on the end. All notes have their equivalent in sound and in silence. The 16th note gets 1/4 of a beat. It looks a lot like an 8th note, but has an extra beam across the top, or an extra flag. The 16th rest gets 1/4 of a count of silence. It also looks like an 8th rest, but it has an extra beam across the top of the rest. A slur is a curved line that connects 2 or more notes of different pitches. It's important to remember that when you're playing a slur, you articulate only the first note. The other notes need to have the air continually blow through them while you're changing fingerings or positions. The early Greeks created a four-note system called a tetrachord. The tetrachord is the building block of a major scale. The first tetrachord has a pattern of a whole step, half step. The second half of the major scale is also a tetrachord, whole step, half step. These two tetrachords are combined with a whole step interval as well. The bass clef classifies the lower pitched instruments in music, such as the tuba, the trombone, and the bassoon. The line notes from the bottom to the top in the bass clef are G, B, D, F, and A, also known as good boys do fine always. The spaces from the bottom to the top are A, C, E, and G. All cows eat grass. Music consists of pitches and rhythms. All of these are notated on a music staff. The staff consists of 5 lines and 4 spaces. On the staff, you number the lines and spaces from the bottom to the top. First the lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and the spaces, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The musical alphabet consists of the first 7 notes in the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. When the notes are going up on the staff, you will go in order of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. If the notes are going down on the staff, then you will want to go backwards through the alphabet. All the notes on the staff can be directly related to the piano keyboard. It's helpful to understand this relationship when learning how to read music. The white notes on the piano keyboard are called natural notes, and all of the black keys are grouped in groups of 2s and 3s and are called accidentals. The treble clef classifies the higher pitched instruments in music, such as the clarinet, the flute, and the trumpet. The treble clef sits on the staff and circles the second line, which is also called G. Because of this, it is called the G clef. The lines from the bottom to the top are E, G, B, D, and F, also known as every good boy does fine. The spaces from the bottom to the top are F, A, C, and E, or face. 2 important components of reading music are ties and repeat signs. A tie is a small curved line that connects 2 notes. You simply tie the values of both of the notes together. It's important to articulate the first note in a tie and not articulate the second note. That way you can connect the rhythm of both together. A repeat sign is a double bar line with 2 dots on the inside. That indicates that you need to go back to the beginning or to the other repeat sign and play that section again. At the beginning of every piece of music is a fraction. That fraction is called a time signature, and it tells you a lot of very important things. The top number tells you how many beats are in a measure. The bottom number will tell you what kind of note gets the beat. There are many different types of time signatures. Some of the more common time signatures are 4/4, which means that there are 4 beats in a measure and that the quarter note gets 1 beat, or 3/4, which means that there are 3 beats in a measure and that the quarter note gets 1 beat. You can also have time signatures with a different number on the bottom, such as 6/8, which would mean that there are 6 beats in a measure and the 8th note gets 1 beat. Musical instruments are either transposing instruments or non-transposing instruments. An example of a transposing instrument would be a B-flat clarinet, an E-flat alto saxophone, an F French horn, or a B-flat trumpet. Those are some of the examples of transposing instruments. For those instruments to be able to play the same sound as a non-transposing instrument, they will need to transpose their music. For example, a non-transposing instrument, the piano, would play an F. If I play an F on my clarinet, it is not the same pitch as the piano. To be able to play the same pitch as the piano, I will need to transpose, which is to take the note up a step. That's the transposition for the clarinet. F concert and F concert. Understanding the transposition for each of your instruments is an important part of being a successful member of a band. Music can be classified into two different feels. A duple feel would be an example of 2 eighth notes in 1 quarter note value. A triple feel would be a triplet, which are 3 eighth notes in 1 quarter note. You can also have 3 quarter notes in the time of 1 half note. All notes have their equivalent in sound and in silence. The sound is written with a note and the silence with a rest. The whole note gets 4 counts. It looks like a donut and it does not have a stem. It can go on any line or space on the staff. The whole rest hangs down with a small box beneath the 4th line. It kind of looks like a hole in the ground, so that helps you to remember that the whole rest gets 4 counts of silence. Thank you for joining me in learning our music essentials. Understanding these important principles of music will really help you as you progress in playing your instrument.